So tonight we are wonderfully gifted with a visit from Janelle Gray, and she is representing the Unitarian Universalists in Sheridan, Wyoming. That is her home now with her husband Phil and her daughter Maya. And together they operate Lupin Lane Food and Flowers, growing produce and flowers year round for local markets. Previously, she was a partner in Landon's Greenhouse and Nursery, which she owned and operated for over 20 years. Janelle has been a Unitarian Universalist since the 90s. Today, she's very involved in her local Sheridan UU Fellowship. She's also one of the cadre of musicians there who liven up the services, and she plays piano frequently. She and her husband, Phil, have also had a crucial role in landscaping the property for the fellowship. Janelle currently serves with Phil as secretaries on the UU board. Like many members, she gives presentations to the lay-led congregation from time to time, with the UU theology being her particular interest to share. The Gray family enjoy the Bighorn Mountains, which are just 20 minutes from their door. That must be amazing. And they also love to fly fish in camp. In the winter, though, Janelle and Phil abandon Maya, and they go to warmer places to learn about unfamiliar flora and fauna. And Maya just loyally maintains the home farm while they're gone. Yeah, we'll give some credit to Maya for that one. In addition to the core trio family, there are 2 other children and 4 grandchildren in the Gray clan. So let's give a warm welcome to Janelle, and we are looking forward to what you can share. As people have questions, please send them into the chat. I will try to monitor that. And after Janelle is through with her presentation, we'll go through some question and answer with you, if that's okay, Janelle. All right. Thank you all for joining us. It's all yours, Janelle.
Okay, thank you. So tonight I'm going to try to answer the question, what the heck is a Unitarian Universalist? The best way to start, it seems to me, is to take a look back at the history of both Unitarianism and Universalism, which were distinct religions, and they still heavily inform our faith today. Unitarianism arose from the rejection of the idea of the Trinity. Unitarians believed that God was one entity, not 3. And Unitarians were hounded as heretics throughout Europe after the development of the Nicene Creed in the 300 ADs. And it wasn't until the 1500s that they found sanctuary in Transylvania. We are still very proud of this history today and aspire ourselves to be heretics and stick to our principles like the Unitarians did. Unitarians were rationalists and believed that Jesus was divine and the Son of God in the same sense that we're all divine and that we're all the children of God. Michael Servetus, a Unitarian, was burned at the stake for saying Jesus is a Son of God rather than Jesus is the Son of God. Unitarianism made it to the new colonies and was actually practiced by 3 of our first presidents, John Adams, John Quincy Adams, and Thomas Jefferson. The church was prominent in New England, owning more real estate on the town squares than even the Congregationalists. Other famous Unitarians were Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Florence Nightingale, Clara Barton, to name just a few. And in modern times, I think of Adlai Stevenson as being a prominent, well-known UUer. Universalism, on the other hand, was a belief that a loving God could not condemn anyone to hell, thus leading to universal salvation. It too established a foothold in the new colonies, most notably led by John Murray. Universalists were prominently involved in the abolition movement. In contrast to the Unitarians, however, their ministers were itinerant and they were not generally associated with a lot of property and wealth. In 1961, the 2 religions realized that they had more in common than not and merged, creating the Unitarian Universalist Church that I'm a part of today with the very awkward name. Anyway, although both Unitarianism and Universalism began as Christian religions, Unitarian Universalism today is not. It is a liberal religion made up of a huge diversity of people, some of whom are Christian, more of whom are atheist or agnostic. In our fellowship, for example, we have a deist, another individual who grew up totally outside of any established faith tradition, a couple of people that were born and raised UU, but most of us are refugees from Catholicism, Protestantism, Christian fundamentalism, Judaism, and Mormonism. In the days when I first joined, we often referred to ourselves as free-thinking mystics with hands, which seems particularly apt. The Unitarian part of our heritage heavily influences our rationalistic bent. The mystic part, I think, must have come from our Universalist roots and refers to why we attend a Sunday service in the first place. And that's because we're on a spiritual quest and we're seeking a formalized way to pursue this. The with hands part describes how UUs very much focus on social justice and action. Since we Unitarian Universalists have no creed and no formal theology, a big criticism of us is that we don't believe anything. So what's the point? However, we do have 7 principles, and agreeing with these principles is a prerequisite to signing the membership book and joining the church. Our 7 principles are deceptively simple, and I'd be surprised if you don't think when I share these that of course you agree with these. But I find that they're not so terribly easy to live. And especially our first principle, which is very similar to you guys' mission statement. That is, we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. The other principles are, number 2, we believe in justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. 3, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. 4, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. 5, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. 6, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. And 7, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Additionally, there's a number of sources that inform our principles, such as direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder. So you use almost to a person, find a lot of comfort and spirituality in nature. The words and deeds of prophetic people. Wisdom from the world's religions, particularly Jewish and Christian and humanist teachings, especially Buddhism, and the spiritual teachings of earth-centered or that is Native American traditions. But you might have noticed that neither our principles nor our sources say anything about heaven, hell, God, or sin, topics in which most religions and religious people are interested. As Nancy Bowen, who is one of our Mountain Desert District luminaries, put it, our principles address behavior rather than theology. But we did have and do have a Unitarian theologian. He was called James Luther Adams, and he defined what he called the 5 smooth stones of liberal theology, which were based on the biblical story where David slew Goliath with 5 smooth stones. I'm not going to list them here. They're really easily accessible via the web, or we can talk about them in the question period if you want. But instead, I'm going to talk about the revisions that Nancy Bowen and Mike Moran made to Adams' theological points, and what they then termed these the 5 jagged rocks of Unitarian Universalism, which was a nod to our Rocky Mountains and a recognition that ours is a dangerous faith, not always smooth going, with theological peaks, as it were, that we struggle to summit over a lifetime. The 5 jagged peaks are: 1, there is a unity that holds us all. 2, all souls are sacred and worthy. 3, courageous love will transform the world. 4, truth continues to be revealed. And 5, salvation is in this lifetime. And I think these theological points really set us apart from most Judeo-Christian, Islamic, and those type of religions. So I'll take them one by one. First of all, there is a unity that holds us, ties directly back to that Unitarian oneness of God notion. Even if we don't believe in God, we do have a fundamental theological idea of unity. We respect other religions, religious traditions, and don't think we have a corner on the truth. This also influences the way we view nature. We do not see ourselves as having dominion over it, but as being part of it. How nature goes, so do we. The second one, that all souls are sacred and worthy, goes back to I think to our universalist roots especially. And it definitely influenced our first principle, which I find super, super challenging, especially these days when I consider such luminaries as Hitler, Putin, Trump. We've been discussing that idea this year. And I think we've generally concluded that while we all have inherent worth, we all start off in the same place and are not predestined at birth, we also have choice. And we are responsible for those choices. Other implications of this theological point are that because we're all inherently worthy, we are not in need of conversion. We don't have original sin, so we don't need to be cleansed of sin. We don't need to be baptized or to have Jesus die for us on the cross to be saved. And since we have supremacy of the individual in matters of faith, we can change and correct our poor choices. The third one, that courageous love will transform the world. Many churches, not just ours, work long and hard to make the world a better place. But this really contrasts with fundamentalism, which preaches that the world is going to end in an apocalypse, and only the second coming of a savior will save the faithful, which are the only ones who can be saved. I think courageous love will transform the world also is kind of expresses itself in kind of an optimism that Unitarians have. And we say the arc of history bends towards justice. And then of course, we're the ones doing the bending. So that idea of optimism is really definitely in James Luther Adams' theological points. The fourth theological point that truth continues to be revealed is one of my favorites. Unlike fundamentalist religions, we do not believe that everything is known and therefore can't be questioned. Revelation is not static, but ever changing. That's probably because we value science and learn from it. Science informs our faith, and we're constantly learning and growing. But I gotta say that my favorite of all is that the one that says salvation is in this lifetime. That has really been powerful in my life. Many of us simply do not believe in an afterlife, and I know some of us do. I know that, but I think that everybody agrees that all we can know for sure is the present. We believe that we should focus on the here and now, on bettering ourselves and the world in the present, not on behaving well to gain a pleasant afterlife. We try to create the kingdom of heaven, as it were, right here on earth with real people. This directly influences our bent towards social action. Now, for me personally, I'm dealing with a terminal illness, and so this has been a very powerful theological point to really try to live life while I'm alive. As far as my personal journey to the UU Fellowship, it began, oddly enough, in the Lutheran Church, where my mother and father sent my siblings and I, but only attended themselves on Christmas and Easter. And I'm not even sure my dad actually went even then. But anyway, when I was a teenager, I got involved in Christian fundamentalism via the Wesleyan Church in Buffalo, Wyoming. But one morning when I was maybe 15, a thought popped into my head. The thought was, there is no God. this was deeply disturbing to me, especially given that people I was hanging out with, the church I was going to, left me feeling unmoored. And it really set off a years-long frantic attempt to silence the thought. It involved things like really going deep into the fundamentalist religion, becoming a Jesus freak, witnessing, and I'm sure being totally obnoxious. However, the thought was not to be denied. In college, I gradually rejected not only the Wesleyan Church, but Christianity in particular. I still consider myself an atheist to this day. But one thing I always loved about both churches was that this thing I'm going to call that Sunday morning thing, that social interaction that is particular to churches, the encouragement to focus for an hour, an uninterrupted hour on spirituality, the fellowship and camaraderie with like-minded folks, the music and the rituals. I had always played piano for the churches I attended. So when I was looking for work in my late 20s, it was a natural step to take a job as a church musician for the United Methodist Church in Wenatchee, Washington. This church wasn't so bad, fairly liberal, but it still featured an awful lot of God talk. I would find myself censoring the sermons and the hymns and the readings and so on. A few years later, my husband and I decided to start a family. And that was the impetus to find a church home where we could agree with what was preached and sang and read. One we wouldn't mind raising our kids in. I certainly didn't want to have to reinterpret everything for my kids or to risk setting them up to believe something that I did not. Somehow we had heard about the UU Church. We both remember that it was very soon after our first visit, like maybe our second time there, that there was a call to sign the membership book, and we just waltzed right up to the front, put down our names, and we've never looked back. For me, attending that UU fellowship for the first time after several years stranded in a Christian church was a huge relief. I didn't have to reinterpret the sermons. The hymns were familiar tunes, which is actually kind of funny that the UU have rewritten a lot of familiar tunes and hymns. But at the UU fellowship, believing in God was not a prerequisite to belonging. And yet the way the services were conducted was very similar to those of the churches I grew up in. We have rituals. We start off every service with singing "Enter, Rejoice, and Come In," and that's because if we don't do that, everybody is just going to keep talking and we're never going to get around to meeting. We light a chalice and we share joys and concerns with candle lightings. When we're not in the midst of COVID precautions, we sing out the children for religious education, which we call RE. We use another melody to bring us out of meditation. We recite a standard blessing of the offering. We usually sing two hymns per service. There's a great joke about the UUs being especially bad when it comes to singing because we're often reading ahead to see if we agree with the words. We'll have a sermon. Our fellowship is currently lay-led, so members either read talks by UU ministers or give original presentations, usually on a monthly theme. The big difference between us and other faith traditions is the lack of God talk, the lack of formal prayer, and the absolute critical importance of following the presentation with a period of discussion, which you guys also do, so this is going to be great. We like to talk. We like to give our opinion to the speaker. We like to question the speaker. I remember one time when somebody who had come for the first time was shocked at that practice. Anyway, my first time at the UU Church was a coming home moment, and it's remained deeply comforting to this day. We did end up raising our 3 kids in the church. For my son, I don't think it was ever very important, but our daughters got a lot out of the youth conferences and friends they made region-wide. Only one daughter still practices the faith today. But for the girls, I think it was huge to find like-minded liberal friends in such a conservative state as Wyoming, as it is for we adults who attend the Sheridan Unitarian Universalist Fellowship today. Now my grandkids are participating, and it was seeing my how my grandson reacts to that social aspect of the church that made me understand my own motivation for that Sunday thing. We own our own building. Prior to purchasing it, we were nomadic, with the last orders being the local Masonic temple. At first, we were allowed access to the main meeting room, which frankly, due to the prevalent religious symbolism, was a bit uncomfortable, until we invited an atheist to give a presentation one Sunday. Even though, like you guys, we did this for informational purposes, we offended the powers that be and were then relegated to the basement. In any case, everywhere we were, we had to pack up all of our religious items each week, and we could never really move in. At our building place now, as she said, as Pamela said in the introduction, Phil and Maya and I have done a bunch of landscaping. We've discussed flying a rainbow and a Black Lives Matter flag along with the American flag. But frankly, we're uneasy. It's hard to know what the risk is in this climate. For instance, the UU minister in Casper stood publicly by the director of the abortion clinic after the recent arson there. We understand she then felt the need to hire security. It wasn't always like this in Wyoming. People could disagree, but live and let live. So I would say being a Unitarian Universalist in Wyoming is no more problematic than being a liberal in Wyoming. In fact, UU services provide me much needed comfort in being amongst like-minded individuals while freely and openly pursuing my spirituality. I love it. That's my presentation. You guys have to clap.
Thank you so much, Janelle. That was very powerful.
Hi, Pam.
And do appreciate the, hi, Pam. I do appreciate the sincerity, like looking through hymns. There's part of the Nicene Creed I can't say about, when I say that, I can say most of it, but some of it I have to edit myself. Yeah. But I appreciate that integrity, and that's what draws me to so many dear friends in Casper that are part of that. Thank you for sharing that. I don't see yet in the chat any questions from people, but I do hope that you'd, if you want to raise your hand, just pull up the video, do that, or I think there's a way to do that under participants. Oh, there we go. Eloise asks you, Janelle, what is the story of Unitarian Universalists choosing Sunday as the day of gathering? Do you know any history on that?
I hadn't really thought about it, but I am sure that it comes from the fact that Unitarianism and Universalism were both Christian religions. So like probably just the same as other churches of practicing or meeting on Sunday. It seems like other churches might have some theological reason for Sunday. We definitely don't. It's just convenient for us to meet on that day. So that's what I assume. Because one of our really famous founders was Ralph Waldo Emerson. He was a minister, and he was I think kind of mainstream in that sense. So yeah.
Katrina asks you if you would, to share some examples of some of your monthly themes that you mentioned. Are they related or whatever?
Oh, I was hoping somebody would ask that. This last month was Care of the Soul, and that turned out to be a really interesting month, especially the first talk of the month, because there was some mention that some members might be uncomfortable with the idea of the soul, because definitely some of us are uncomfortable when people start talking about God. But I think we're less uncomfortable with soul, but some of the discussion was just really great. Somebody posited that she thought that rather than the soul being in us, that we're in the soul. And then my husband said, that he thought that you can say that the soul is just out there and we're all bumping into each other in the soul. I don't know. I don't understand it. He might speak here.
It's a kind of a nebulous idea, and I'm not sure it's really well formed, but basically my thought is that we don't necessarily have individual souls. We all contribute to one very large soul, and everybody's part of it. That's kind of my thought.
I've given talks on like forgiveness, and I'm giving a talk next month on journey.
Yeah, July's theme is journey. Yeah, we've had a month talking about forgiveness. So
You do the principles sometimes. You go through the different principles.
the theme for May was meditation, wasn't it? Yeah. I think so.
Yes, I believe.
Yeah, we used to do this, I believe, where members would talk about their beliefs and stuff. So
Thank you for that. We're doing a Threads of Wisdom with Wyoming Interfaith Network also, and it would be great to have you join and share on those too if you feel up to it. Open invitation to anyone here tonight. Warren wanted to ask you, how do you deal with the power of evil in your spiritual life?
yeah,
Is there that
like I said,
concept? And
that has been very tough because like I say, we have that first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and our members have definitely had a problem dealing with some of the recent world figures that are around. Like I said in my talk, the best answer that I've come up with lately is, and we had some presentations on this, is that we're all inherently worthy, but we could mess it up. If any of those guys decided, well, it's too late for Hitler, but Putin, if Putin decided to repent, or if Trump did or something, then we would welcome them and stuff. I don't think they're going to. Do either of my fellow Unitarians have anything to say about evil?
Yeah,
It's tough. All right, Maya was looking at me.
I have thoughts about evil. My thoughts about evil are that evil is an action. And my favorite principle is definitely the inherent worth and dignity and of every person. And for me, that never ever goes away. But if someone acts in a way that is evil, then it is just to prevent them from acting that way and hurting more people. And so it's a thing where it's a difference between like your inherent worth and your actions, and like in response, your actions other people will take on you may change. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, I think it's a really tough one. So
thank you for that. And I did hear you earlier during your talk on principles talk about the point of personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And the principles as you mentioned them. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Katrina wanted to know also, what is your personal favorite part of your UU services?
oh, the talks, definitely, and the discussion that follows, and so yeah, I just love that part because people have such a different take on the theme, and so sometimes it's disappointing. They're not as meaty as you want. Sometimes they're so meaty that you chew on it for a long time. But they're all very thought-provoking. So.
I was surprised that when I'm doing some practicum, practicing being a deacon in the Episcopal Church, but the Atlantic City group does that after their service, and it was wonderful. It was so refreshing to have that, discuss what this service meant to us and where we carry it with us when we walk out the door.
Yeah.
It's not just here and it's somewhere
Do-
further to go.
Do people ask questions?
They did, and shared their ideas and inspirations that they received and inspired us back, which was just incredible. It was really beautiful.
Yeah, when I'm presenting, then I kind of almost dread the discussion because I am afraid I'm going to get questions that I can't answer, which I always do. But yeah, people have such great thoughts. So
I'm going to ask my personal question. Do you get involved with projects? I understand your thoughts on trying to raise other flags. And do you have your fellowship? Do you have projects that you work on and try to share in the community? And then I have another question from Jordan after that.
Yeah, yes. I think our members are very involved in a lot of projects in the community. But as the UU Church, there's just a few ones that we are involved in. The crop walk type things. There's a soup thing, which I cannot remember the name of it now. But I think, we're aging. And so I think we're doing less. And I think it's a big complaint from our younger crowd that we're not as socially involved as we should be. We're also small, but we, a lot of our members are involved in politics and so forth. So, yeah.
Thank you. Jordan wanted to know, as a UU and an atheist, do you consider yourself religious in any way?
Yep. And it was really fun to prepare for this talk because I was thinking about those many times when people have said, you guys don't believe anything, anybody can belong, kind of implying that you're not really a religion. And I was thinking to myself, why do I bother to go if I am an atheist? But again, it's that connection, that search for spirituality. I think that's what those of us who attend weekly are really getting out of it. And I would consider myself religious, and can still have that spiritual experience that I think Christians have, and undoubtedly other religions have. I don't know what it is. Is it like a combination of intellect and emotion that it's just like, yeah, that's right. So yes, I do consider myself religious.
Thank you. Katrina asks, how are you organized to manage finance? Oh, there's some before that. I missed that as it jumped. How do you think someone should respond if confronted about their spiritual practice and faith?
Well, I love what you guys are doing. This is really interesting, and I hope we can talk. Does that mean I did have a lot of this theology that I ended up researching a few years ago was from an employee that we had at the greenhouse that was a young teenage fundamentalist Christian who was saying things like, you guys you don't believe anything. And she had just really fascinating questions and really inspired me to think about what is the difference between what I understand she believes because of my experience in the fundamentalist church and what we believe. And so I did, and one of our monthly themes was UU theology, ? Back then. And so I gave a presentation on the 5 jagged peaks and so forth. So how should we respond?
With with questions and research.
Yeah, I don't know that we'd be understood. I don't know that it'd be very easy to explain. So I'll have to think about it.
And Bernie asks, how are you organized to manage finances? Because you now have your own building and you're maintaining the landscaping and such.
Right. Yeah, I'm so impressed with us because we're really small. We have a board like any other church. We have a treasurer. The board approves expenses. Currently, we're having a fund drive to build an outdoor patio in honor of one of our main people who died recently. So the larger answer to that question is that everything, and I imagine it's the same for other churches, that should we disband, all of our assets go to the Unitarian Universalist group, the nationwide group. So currently it's owned by the local group, but so we have an offering, have donations, we have fund drives for specific projects. We're doing good. We're doing fine with we're maintaining it. So.
And Eloise wanted to know, as each person is inherently of value and worth, and in the event one person in the UU community acts in a way that creates harm, how does the community help bring healing for both the individual and the community?
That's what I was afraid I was going to get, these hard questions. Oh, geez.
We have covenants, which in many cases are like agreements that we come into a space with. This is something that I like primarily am thinking about with like going to camps and things where there were sometimes pretty big disagreements between different members. And I think at that time, I don't know that we handle it very well. Yeah. I think it's often there's like an attempt to like listen to everyone, but not really make a decision about it. But I think that in theory, the idea is to like really have a process of trying to communicate what the difference is and trying to see if it can be reconciled, and if there's a way to meet all of the needs in the space.
And we might not be able to. There might just be someone that is not going to fit in, and I don't know. That luckily has not happened. So thankfully.
Yeah, I'm happy for you. It hasn't. I've seen it happen in other churches.
Yeah.
And it's tough stuff. Warren is an incredible historian on faith and denominations and other faiths in Wyoming. He knew about James Reeb. James Reeb, it should be R-E-E-B. He died in Selma, Alabama, with Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
We honored him back in Casper just a few years ago and had a big mural done downtown Casper honoring him.
Yeah, and in research,
put his beliefs on the line. Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Is this a good model for you as well? You mentioned Black Lives Matter and other things.
Yeah, we definitely admire him and talk about him. There are I was just in researching for this talk was because one of your criteria is famous people or prominent people in the faith. There are so many Unitarians that you use that I had kind of spaced out. So yeah, definitely talk about James Reeb and aspire to that. So we might get a chance here in Wyoming. Oh, and we had one of our members that was such an inspiration for us and impetus to buy the fellowship hall was Chuck Graves, and Chuck Graves actually represented the the University of Wyoming,
The black.
the Black 7 or Black 14, I can't remember. So we still do that. So
Katrina and the Bradley family and a few other folks just gathered in Laramie. And if you want to share some of that with your group, Dr. Dixon at UW is an incredible man. Frederick Douglass Dixon,
okay,
professor of Black Studies there. And
okay.
he'd be a treat, I'm sure, if you want to bring in other folks there.
Okay.
So are there any other questions? There we go.
Oh,
Are
absolutely.
people welcome to attend, even if you don't want membership? Can we come and visit and attend?
Absolutely. We do from time to time have people who are really opposed to joining anything. They're welcome. It's completely up to the person. When Phil and I joined, I kind of think we were kind of coming into that service late, and the pastor was talking about it. And the prerequisites were that you agreed with the 7 principles, that you agreed to donate money, and I think that was it.
That was about it.
That was about it. So we signed it. So no, you don't have to join. You can come. We will welcome you.
I pretty much like sort of.
Okay, I'm gonna have to talk with my boards. So our requirement here at the Sheridan UU, as far as I know, is that you just you have to sign the membership book to be a member. So that you go on record that you're a member.
So as a fellow musician, I wanted to ask you, is there a spiral version of your hymnal available? My friend
Yes.
Inga gave me one of the UU hymnals, but it's still the bound one, and it's pretty hard to lay it on the piano and play.
Yes.
So you have a
yes.
spiral one?
Yep. And there's a new hymnal, the teal hymnal, which also comes in the spiral version. And one of our absolute favorite hymns is Blue Boat Home. So I'll check that out. That's in the new version. Talks about the earth being our blue boat home. And so it's really wonderful. But yes.
When I did attend, I loved Los Colores as well.
We'll have to try
There's a
that
little
one.
Spanish in there. Yeah,
So
that's wonderful. All of us we have a current theme with Willie Sinclair at the reservation. They're our neighbors here in Du Bois area, that we are just one human race, come in all flavors and colors, and
yeah.
like a good field of beautiful flowers. All right. I think that we have great gratitude here, and didn't see anything else. If anybody has had trouble asking questions, if you want to open up your video and raise your hand, we can do that if you're having trouble with the chat room. And I didn't want to miss anybody that way. Any others?
Thank you.
All right.
Well, this is
We
a
certainly
very,
hope to stay connected with you, Janelle. This was
Yeah.
beautiful sharing.
this was a definite UU type project. So I'll try to convince more people from the fellowship to tune in, because I think we would all really enjoy it. So.
All right. Bravo, and thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And thank you all for joining us tonight. And we hope that you'll look for threads of wisdom, and here come the thank yous.
Thanks.
All right, lots of those, a lot of gratitude. And please feel free, Janelle, to share everything on YouTube and Facebook as it comes along. So
Okay.
we can share with your community as well. Nice to meet you all.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you. Thank you.
Anything
Thank
else
you,
you want to
Janelle.
add, Jordan or Katrina?